Thank you very much, and I ask that you remain standing for the universal prayer. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto you. You are omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. You are truth, knowledge, and bliss. You are the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptations and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, greed, and hatred. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold you in all these names and forms. Let us serve you in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember you. Let us ever sing your glories. Let your name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in you forever and ever. Amen. You may be seated. Good afternoon. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Franklin Kahn, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Communications, Major General the Honorable Mervyn Dillon, Minister of Housing and Urban Development, His Worship the Mayor and Deputy Mayor of Point Fortin, Mr. Michael Quamina, Chairman of Petrotrin, Ms. Simone Thornmora, Mr. Renal Ajudasing, Deputy Chairman, of Petrotrin, Ms. Simone Thornmora, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Ms. Penelope Bradshaw-Niles, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Ms. Arlene Chow, Chief Executive Officer of Heritage Petroleum Company Limited, representatives of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the Estate Police Association, and the National Petroleum Staff Association, ex-Petrotrin employees, members of the media, members of the viewing public, other specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Arlene Gorin-George, and I'm your Master of Ceremonies for this afternoon's proceedings. I'm now calling to the mic to welcome you to this auspicious occasion, the Deputy Chairman of Petrotrin, Mr. Renal Ajudasing.
Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Franklin Kahn, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Communication, Major General the Honorable Edmund Dillon, Minister of Housing and Urban Development, His Worship the Mayor and Deputy Mayor of Point Fortin, Kennedy Richards, Mr. Michael Quamina, Chairman, Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, Mrs. Simone Thornmora, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Ms. Penelope Beckers-Niles, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Ms. Arlene Chow, Chief Executive Officer, Heritage Petroleum Company, representatives of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the Estate Police Association, and the National Petroleum Staff Association, ex-Petrotrin employees, members of the media, other specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to this event where we are launching the distribution of lands to the Petrotrin ex-employees. It is quite fitting that this is taking place in the southern Western Peninsula, the epicenter of the oil industry of Trinidad and Tobago. Many of you who will benefit from this project would be familiar with these parts as you would have worked in and around this area for many years. We are also very proud and honored to have the Prime Minister with us this afternoon, signifying the importance of this project. It took us a lot for us to get to this point, but it is indeed gratifying that we are here today. I, for one, feel grateful to be part of this event, as it marks a significant milestone in the Petrotrin saga. A saga that encompasses the entire ambit of accomplishments and emotions, and a saga that has earned its place in the pages of history of Trinidad and Tobago. As we look forward to today's proceedings, I take the opportunity to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairman. And it was really remiss of me that I did not go into our safety briefing. And as a representative of Heritage Petroleum, where we put safety first, last, and everything in between, I will now introduce Ms. Najela Samlal Singh to give us a safety briefing.
Pleasant good afternoon, everyone. A special welcome to Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Communications, the Honorable Major General Edmund Dillon, Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Mr. Michael Quamina, Chairman of Petrotrin, Mr. Renal Ajuda Singh, Deputy Vice Chairman of Petrotrin, Ms. Simone Thorne Mora, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Ms. Esme Reynolds Charles, Special Advisor to the Minister, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Ms. Penelope Bradshaw Niles, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Ms. Arlene Chow, Chief Executive Officer, Heritage Petroleum Company Limited, representatives of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the Estate Police Association, and the National Petroleum Staff Association, ex-Petrotrin employees, members of the media, other specially invited guests, the viewing public, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Palo Seco Government Primary School. Please permit me the opportunity to conduct a safety briefing to communicate some important HSSE information to you with regards to your well-being while on this facility. Please note that there are no planned drills for today. However, in the event of an emergency, an alarm will be sounded via the use of an air horn, and you will be directed by the HSSE officers attired in the high-vis vests to the primary muster points. All persons would be asked to evacuate the auditorium to the right side in an orderly manner and to make their way through the car park to the primary muster point. The primary muster point is located in the car park to the northeastern side of the building. If for any reason this primary muster point is deemed compromised, persons will then be directed to the secondary muster point, which is located at the Savannah behind the southern end of the building. At the muster point, a head count will be conducted, and you will await further instructions from our HSSE officers. The designated emergency responders for today's proceedings is the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Services. For emergencies involving fire, person down, natural disasters, TTFS will be conducted. In emergency situations, persons who require any sort of medical attention, please bring it to the attention of the nearby HSSE officers, and you would be provided with first aid attention initially, and then be transported to the nearest appropriate medical facility if deemed appropriate. There are paramedics and ambulance service at this proceedings today on standby. For any security issues, please direct all reports to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the uniformed security officers present. The male and female washroom facilities are located at the southern side of the building from where you are sitting in the back of the auditorium. Please proceed down the corridor, turn left, and the doors are clearly labeled on the right. Please observe all COVID-19 protocols, wash or sanitize hands, maintain social distancing, wear mask during the sessions. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Najila. And I did not rename the Minister of Housing, the Honorable Edmund Dillon. And also, I'd like to recognize in our audience today the Honorable Nicole Oliveri, who is Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries and a Member of Parliament for La Brea area. We move swiftly along with our program this afternoon, and I call to the mic Mr. Michael Kwamina, Chairman of Petrotrin, with remarks.
Thank you very much, Arlene. I think after having heard all of the salutations repeated, I think I can get away with saying all protocols observed. But as somebody firmly entrenched in Port of Spain, I'll take the opportunity to welcome the Honorable Prime Minister to Deep South, and also the Honorable Minister of Energy. This afternoon, I've been asked to make a few remarks, and as all lawyers should, I take my instructions seriously, and only a few remarks shall I make. I am certain that either or both the Honorable Minister of Energy and the Honorable Prime Minister will remind all present from where the TPHL group has come and where it is now fortunate to be. I will leave these impressive achievements to them, but they are in fact achievements of which we all should be proud. And I again wish to take the opportunity to publicly thank the previous and current board, management, and staff for what has been an impressive almost 2 years, despite the ups and downs of the market. And I can assure you there are more exciting times to come. Those times include our Jubilee expression of interest closing, which takes place tomorrow, with 8 companies having already expressed an interest, including 5 international companies not already in Trinidad and Tobago. And on land, I'm pleased to say that several world-class exploration companies are currently engaged with Heritage for onshore exploration partnerships, and with whom we have already signed confidentiality agreements. However, lost sometimes in the excitement is a thought for the former staff of Petrotrin, for they too had a part to play in what TPHL has achieved. Because Heritage and Paria did not come out of nowhere. There was a foundation left behind that of course required significant work and remodeling, but it nevertheless provided a platform from which to launch these new, lean, effective, and efficient entities known as Heritage and Paria. I fondly remember a discussion with some retirees from Point Fortin that is particularly poignant, having regard to today's events. They said to me that every time they drive our highways, traverse our flyovers, and pass by our impressive buildings in the capital city, They feel a sense of pride because their hard work contributed significantly to these monuments of success. As simple as that premise was, I had not thought about it before, and I must concede that their pride is not misplaced. There can be no doubt that all those who have worked and continue to work in our energy sector deserve our support and gratitude, and that is what today is about. So while there was unquestionably a need for a significant change in the way we did things in this sector, and for transformation into entities like Heritage and Paria, we cannot forget the positive parts of the legacy that Petrotrin and its predecessors have left for us. Apart from the benefits from the operational side of the business, Petrotrin has left us with some remarkable facilities, including sporting, recreational, and medical, along with many homes, several commercial properties, and vast amounts of unused lands. We are well on our way to implementing the action plan to put all of these assets to the best use for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, especially the sporting and recreational facilities, the homes, and the land. You would no doubt have noticed that already the Augustus Long Hospital, Guaracara Park, and the Point-a-Pair Club, to name a few, are being refurbished, maintained, and put to good use. Apart from the former workers, the companies also recognize as important stakeholders the fence-line communities, which would of course include as members many of the said former workers. As such, a corporate social responsibility policy has been developed along with a suite of CSR initiatives geared towards sustainable development in education, culture, the environment, and volunteerism. In this regard, the company kicked off its CSR drive with a day of volunteerism throughout its fence-line communities to mark the first anniversary of its operations. This saw employees volunteering their time and skills to cleaning and refurbishing, among other things, recreation grounds, parks, community centers, and bus sheds. While the COVID-19 pandemic has caused us to defer planned programs such as the Heritage Information Technology Training, HIT, music literacy training, and others, the company recognized the immediate needs of many families negatively impacted by the lockdown in our fence-line communities, and quickly adjusted its CSR drive to include the distribution of food hampers to vulnerable families. In this regard, the employees once more stepped in and also contributed over $100,000 of their own money towards relief hampers, in addition to those provided by the companies for the families. The relief initiative was also extended, whereby the companies distributed 4,000 seedlings to families to grow what they eat. And there are plans to further extend this to growing food for sale and to facilitate the marketing of what has been grown. The Heritage Education Resource Opportunities, HERO, program will be kicking in tandem with the SEA examination. Top performers from fence-line primary schools will benefit by having their school supplies sponsored by the company throughout secondary school and up to university level. Heritage also continues to sponsor the Point-a-Pair Wildfowl Trust. And in the sphere of culture, Heritage has sponsored the Siparia Deltones for Panorama 2019 and will be working with the Palo Seco Diatones to further music literacy among youths. I simply wanted to take some time today during my remarks to touch on these mainly non-operational matters, because while certainly the main focus is profitability and making a significant contribution to the national economy, TPHL must also be an entity with a conscience. And where it can responsibly do so, it must do more than just pay its bills and taxes. It must make a holistic contribution to the betterment of the lives of all of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Today's event is just one step in that direction. The TPHL Group will be a source of immense pride for Trinidad and Tobago by focusing on profitability, operational excellence, and world-class talent as a performance-driven oil and gas company with a social conscience and responsibility. Today's launch symbolizes our acknowledgement of the contribution to this success made by the former employees of Petrotrin. And all we seek in return is to encourage all of you to support the new companies as they seek to make their contribution, which will redound to the benefit of all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Permit me, on behalf of the TPHL Group, to once again thank all of you for your contribution and congratulate those who eventually stand to benefit from this most excellent initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kwamina. And just a reminder that we are live on TTT this afternoon. Welcome to our audience at home viewing us here live from Palo Seco. And we move swiftly along with the program. And we now have an address by the Honorable Major General Edmund Dillon, the Minister of Housing and Urban Development. Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Communications, Mr. Nicole Oliver, Parliament Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Your Worship, the Mayor of Point Fortin, Councillor Kennedy Richards, Mr. Michael Kwamina, Chairman, Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, Mr. Renal Ajua Singh, Vice Chairman, Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, Mr. Usley Francis, Chairman, Land Settlement Agency, Ms. Simone Thornmore, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Ms. Penelope Bradshaw Niles, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, Mrs. Arlene Chow, Chief Executive Officer, Heritage Petroleum Company Limited, representatives of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the Estate Police Association, and the National Petroleum Staff Association, former Petrotrin employees, members of the media, other specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very pleasant good afternoon to you all. Today it gives me great pleasure to be here as we launch the distribution project for lands to former employees of Petrotrin, fulfilling a promise made by the Honorable Prime Minister when he spoke at Parliament on the 17th of December 2018. He stated inter alia that the government would undertake to allocate resources so that calm and prosperity would return to Petrotrin former employees and their families. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what has brought us here today as we execute the vision and the promise of the Honorable Prime Minister. Throughout our history, there has always been a nexus between the oil sector, oil companies, and development of the South and Southwestern Peninsula. Employment in the oil sector and related industries has become a very way of life for us who live in these areas. Over the years, in addition to providing employment and career opportunities, the oil companies undertook the role of provider and a facilitator in ensuring access to facilities for social, sporting, and recreational activities, educational pursuits, housing accommodations, as well as health facilities. And I can recall him right in Point Fortin as an example. The area hospital, which is now a brand new hospital in Point Fortin, which the Prime Minister opened quite recently, but the old area hospital was a legacy of Shell Company. The Mica Oval was a legacy of Shell. The housing stock, Clifton Hill, Mahaica, and Tishe were all legacies of Shell Company at that time. History tells us, ladies and gentlemen, that the earliest incarnation of the oil sector started in 1865, and by 1908, Trinidad was recording its first commercial oil production. The petroleum sector has experienced several transitions over time in Trinidad and Tobago, and history certainly informs us that it was successive PNM government that took decisions in the best interests of our citizens that has kept the sector afloat through trying times. One can remember in 1969, when government interventions saw BP's local oil fields becoming Trinidad Tesoro, subsequently Trintopec. In 1974, Shell oil fields and refinery were purchased by the government to become Trintoc. In 1985, the government again purchased Texaco assets and refinery at Pointe-à-Pierre. At that time, it made no sense to have two refineries, one in Point Fortin and the other one, of course, in Pointe-à-Pierre. And so it's at that time there was a merger between Trintopec and Trintoc to form Petrotrin in 1993. Of course, again, it was government intervention that saw the establishment of Atlantic LNG in 1999 with the monetization of gas at Point Fortin. The common thread throughout this, ladies and gentlemen, in all this historical data is that the state or the government over the years has always played an important part when they step up to the plate to save employment and, of course, the generation of income in the oil sector. We are all familiar with the fact that the income earned from this industry at the individual, community, and national level help to enhance the nation's economic development. We also know that by 2018, there had been months of careful review and analysis of the problems facing Petrotrin, and after 101 years of operation in the oil sector, the government had to restructure the company. As difficult as the Petrotrin issue has been to deal with, there is hope that can be a brighter future for those who are most affected by the planned changes beyond the termination benefits. I want you to know that, of course, this government, as all PNM government, will always work in the best interests of our citizens. The government remains committed to cushioning the effects of the fallout that occurred from the closure of the refinery and the changes to exploration and production. The government, under the astute leadership of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, recognizes that access to land can be utilized as a vehicle for real change in the socio-economic fortunes of our citizens. The provision of service residential lots eligible for employees to build their own homes and the provision of agricultural plots with funding for agribusiness will help to provide some stability for those affected by the changes. And so by enabling our citizens a pathway to property ownership, we are not just meeting a family's need for safe and secure shelter and the ability to earn a living through agricultural pursuits, but we are also providing opportunities that could change their lives' fortunes forever. The wealth distribution and widespread economic activities that will flow from this initiative over time will benefit families at the personal, community, and of course the national level. Let me impress upon you the importance of not squandering this life-changing opportunity, but instead allow it to work for you and your families. Think of it as the impetus for you to put down roots and become part of a community. Land is a tangible asset, and ownership of land adds to your worth. It's now up to you to create vibrant and resilient communities that will redound to you and your family's benefit. I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, I want to congratulate the Honorable Prime Minister for this initiative and all the hard-working members of the interministerial committee that put the policy framework together, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. I want to congratulate them so that today we can execute the vision and the promise of the Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the courtesy of attention. May God continue to bless us all and bless our country. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And at this juncture, we would have a brief entertainment interlude by one of the young persons within this very community. His name is Stefan Thomas, a member of the Diatonic Pan Institute, to give us a bit of entertainment. Thank you very much, Stefan. And young people like Stefan is who we'll be working with along with the diatonics to deliver music literacy so that our youth in this area could be able to read music and display their talents on other levels. Let's give Stefan another round of applause. We're moving along with the program this afternoon, and I now call to the podium to address you Senator the Honorable Franklin Kahn, the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Ali. The Honorable Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, the Honorable Major General Retired Edmund Dillon, Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Senator the Honorable Donna Cox, Minister of Communication, His Worship the Mayor of Point Fortin, Mr. Kennedy Richards, Chairman and Deputy Chairman of Petrotrin, the CEO of Heritage, Permanent Secretaries. I want to pay special recognition to representatives of the Oilfield Workers Trade Unions, representative of the National Petroleum Staff Association, which incidentally I was once an assistant secretary, and representative from the Estate Police Association, councillors of both the Siparia and Point Fortin corporations, former Petrotrin employees, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure, as the line minister for Petrotrin, that I welcome you to witness the launch of the land distribution program in which residential lots are being offered to former Petrotrin employees who receive termination benefits resulting from the restructuring of the company. That was in November 2018. This was a commitment that the government made on the restructuring and which we intend to keep. Ladies and gentlemen, the last time the Honorable Prime Minister and myself visited this very hall in Palo Seco here, that was in November 2019, to address former Petrotrin workers and residents of the community, this hall was ram-cram, overflowing to capacity. Today, on our return, we are only allowed 25 persons in the audience. Not because we are unpopular, but I think because of other circumstances. This, ladies and gentlemen, is because COVID-19 has changed the world at its most fundamental level. Let me repeat that. This, ladies and gentlemen, is because COVID-19 has changed the world at its most fundamental level. World trade is based on supply and demand, and the world economy is driven by consumerism. Countries and companies alike buy and sell goods and services based on supply and demand. With the slowing down of the global economy, demand has fallen for all commodities, including energy sector outputs such as oil, gas, and petrochemicals. It is in that context that Trinidad and Tobago, as an energy-based economy, has to survive and continue to survive. It was 9 months ago that the Minister of Finance delivered a national budget based on an oil price of $65 per barrel, a gas price of $2.75 per MMBTU. We had budget for revenues of $47.7 billion and expenditures of $51.7, supported by deficit financing of $4.05 billion, or 2.4% of GDP. At the mid-year review in May 2019, these figures were adjusted to $52.07 billion in expenditure and $47.5 billion in revenue, with a resultant overall deficit of $4.57 billion. Volatility in the oil and gas is not an uncommon experience. and is normally a cyclic event. We have had major global financial upheavals, such as 2008 global financial crisis. Excessive risk taken by banks, combined with a downturn of the subprime lending market in the United States, culminated in an international banking crisis. The crisis sparked the Great Recession, a global recession which, until the coronavirus recession, was the most severe recession since the Great Depression. However, COVID-19 has rewritten the storyline. No country has been left unscathed, and economies of both developed and developing countries have been severely impacted. Trinidad and Tobago is no exception. However, by early action, we have avoided a level of penetration of the virus compared to other countries and have contained the loss of lives to single digits. Added to this, we have managed the economy fairly well in spite of very difficult circumstances. As a moderate producer of oil and gas and petrochemicals, we are price takers and therefore directly impacted by changes in the global markets of these commodities. That is a fact. For the first quarter of 2020, WTI oil price averaged $55 per barrel, and these prices were maintained in January and February of 2020. Gas prices, and in particular NBP, which is the European market, to which we are more closely aligned, averaged $5.5 per MMBTU during the same period. In its 2020 outlook, the US Department of Energy Statistics Bureau, the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, had predicted for 2020 an oil price of $60 per barrel and Henry Hub price of $3 US per MMBTU. The EIA also announced back in January that it expected the US to become a net exporter in 2020 for the first time ever. The agency said that the United States will start exporting more crude oil and petroleum products than it imports for the first quarter of 2020, and then would remain a net exporter for years to come. US shale production had not been a part of any agreement to cut output to support prices until recently when Russia and Saudi brought pressure to bear by oversupplying the market. Oil prices, which started strong at the beginning of this year, just 6 months ago, at $61 per barrel in January, plummeted in the second quarter, with WTI on that dreaded day on April 20th, 2020, closing at negative $37 per barrel. It's hard to perceive what a negative oil price is. What that means is that you have oil to sell and you have to pay somebody to take it from you. Demand for oil has also dropped because of the corona. The EIA now forecasts that WTI will average $38 per barrel in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, the low prices has resulted in shale companies, in particular in the United States, the Permian Basin, going into bankruptcy. It has been reported in the US media that US shale company Whittling Petroleum Corporation of North Dakota was the first bankruptcy casualty. It is now predicted that 30% of shale companies will go bust before the end of this year. Heritage has still survived and is doing reasonably well, and I will deal with that in a little while. The impact of COVID-19 on the operation of domestic upstream companies has been minimal as companies continue to operate. The majority of development and exploration activities are on stream, and any deferral is for a short time frame. As a consequence, oil and gas production has been maintained at relatively pre-COVID-19 levels. Gas production is currently at 3.5 BCF per day, and oil production is averaging 57,000 barrels of oil per day. As a matter of fact, in April this year, oil production reached 60,000 barrels per day for the first time in 18 months. On the petrochemical side, ammonia and methanol, however, were at their lowest level in years, averaging between $200 to $250 per metric ton. Methanol has a new production capacity planned for 2020, bringing more supplies to the market, already facing a global surplus. The addition of new supplies to the market in 2020 and the COVID pandemic, which has exacerbated the already weakened market, which will severely constrain the demand for methanol in the short to medium term. Future prices for methanol for 2020 is about $215 per metric ton. That commodity, ladies and gentlemen, in 2013 was selling for $700 per metric ton. The same story goes for ammonia. Global ammonia prices are affected by oversupply. The advent of COVID has further weakened demand, and prices for ammonia has fallen for the first time in many years to under $200 per metric ton. The global ammonia price level has started to hurt some production spots, and cutbacks are now the order of the day. The petrochemical companies and all downstream operators at Point Lisa's industrial estate are an integral part of the domestic energy sector, which comprises upstream, midstream, and downstream. The energy landscape has changed with the advent of shale oil and gas in the United States. Due to the surplus global capacity and the impact of COVID, there is significant reduction in industrial demand for ammonia and methanol, leading to very depressed prices. Some local companies have taken the decision to shut in some plants and defer turnarounds during this COVID pandemic period. This has also impacted on other locations outside of Trinidad, such as Chile, as demands have fallen and storage levels are high. So we have temporarily shut in certain plants at Point Lisa's, not because we did anything wrong, It is because the global demand is so low that prices has reached rock bottom and prices are now below your cost of production. Luckily, we have companies here who are in for the long haul. They plan to ride through this depression. They have maintained all their staff and they are waiting for the cyclicity of the product to rebound hopefully before the end of the year. This has nothing to do with the rhetoric of the opposition about who negotiated a high gas price with the upstreamers. As a matter of fact, the upstreamers recently has even reduced their price of natural gas to the NGC. But still, it is not sufficient to keep some of the plants in operation. So the companies have decided to shut in the plants for maintenance over the next 3 months or so, keep their staff, and hope for an upturn in the market before the end of the year. In spite of that, what I have just said, Trinidad and Tobago is still fortunate because of proper planning, proper energy policy, and what is most important, and the Prime Minister has been saying it all along, is relationship building. The Prime Minister went on a world tour. He met with the leaders of the upstream companies in the boardrooms at their headquarters, in The Hague in the Netherlands, in London in England, in Melbourne in Australia. We built relationships. In the immediate future, there will be minimal disruptions in the operation of the domestic upstream sector. Accordingly, gas production, as I said, has been maintained at 3.5 BCF per day. The issues facing downstream company is the price of petrochemicals, ammonia, methanol, and urea. These prices are dictated by the global market. At the level of the upstream, investment levels are literally the same as pre-COVID. All the major oil companies, BP, Shell, BHP, and EOG, have committed to their investment program over the next 5 years, which is approximately $6 or $7 billion US. This in spite of Shell taking a severe hit on its asset value by about $17 million. BP took a hit of $15 billion. They have reduced their global investment levels between 30 and 50%. Trinidad and Tobago is the only country, and I say that without fear of contradiction, where both Shell and BP has maintained their investment levels. We must be doing something right. These companies are not stupid. They are driven by their bottom line. They have a stable economy, they have good leadership, and they have good opportunities for investment. BPTT has a slate of projects, such as Cassia Compression, Savannah, Ginger, Jasmine, which will bring in new gas. Shell has a rig currently drilling Barracuda. After Barracuda, they move into Colibri. And then there's the Manatee project, which is the government of Trinidad and Tobago disengaged from the unitization concept. And the Laurent Manatee that was bandied around for years, we are now allowed to develop Manatee by ourselves. And that is a significant gas discovery for the medium term. We expect production sometime in 2025. BHP, at the end of this month, will be bringing back the Invictus deepwater drill ship to drill, ladies and gentlemen, a well called Broadside, which will be the deepest well ever to be drilled in Trinidad and Tobago, in the deep water. There is no company drilling in the deep water in the Western Hemisphere as we speak. That well is estimated to cost $100 million US. That is 670 million TT dollars for one well, you know. BHP will also be bringing in a rig later this year to drill the Ruby project. The Ruby project is the largest oil discovery in Trinidad and Tobago since Puitik and salmon was discovered in the 70s. This field is expected to peak in 2022 at 16,000 barrels per day, ramping up our crude oil production as Heritage continues its course in increasing production. However, we face a crisis. I won't say a crisis, a challenge at Point Lisas. Because Point Lisas is petrochemicals. The demand from ammonia and methanol is rock bottom. The government recently established a gas value chain committee. We have engaged international consultant Gas Strategies Limited out of the UK. The committee is chaired by Mr. Wendell Motley, ORTT. It includes myself and Minister Young, the Permanent Secretary and the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy. We are meeting with everybody in the value chain, upstream, midstream, and downstream, to collectively craft solutions as to how to overcome this challenge in the short term and to build the long-term gas future of Trinidad and Tobago. So when the leader of the opposition states that the energy sector is dead, she is dead to the truth. The energy sector, despite the challenges, is alive and kicking. We are not burying our heads in the sand. We face serious challenges. It baffles me before I go to sleep in the night to understand how can we keep the investment levels so high. I thank God for it. Okay, and our gas production profile, while it is still not where we want it, it is not disastrous. And we will hang in there and ride through this period of low commodity prices. And when we build the future, and when we build the economy of the energy sector into 2022, 23, 24, and 25, I think Trinidad will be in a very, very good place. But everybody knows it's election time. You'll hear all sorts of rumors. People will say things that are untrue. But worse yet, they will deliberately say things that are untrue. I got a message on my phone yesterday from a reporter. and it is a schedule called Caribbean Common Market Declaration and Certificate. The exporter on this document says Heritage Petroleum Company Limited. We sell 800 and, according to this document, 830,000 barrels of crude left Pointe-à-Pied on a Venezuelan vessel. It is signed with a CARICOM stamp. It has a stamp with a heritage stamp with a heritage signature. When I asked Heritage, what is the position with this, I got scared when I saw it. If you see the response, the ship that purported to have taken the crude never even landed in Trinidad. The ship is too big to dock at Pointe-à-Pied. And Petrotrin never sold the crude in a batch of 850,000. But here you have a document circulated on social media with a heritage stamp, with a forged signature. That is all well and good, Trinidad in an election, but a forged CARICOM signature also from the CARICOM Secretariat. That is the length in which certain operatives in Trinidad will go to discredit Trinidad and Tobago, trying to encourage sanctions by the United States of America. But we know better than that. So, on that I say no more. I just want to spend a couple minutes now on the restructuring of Petrotrin and what has been, in my view, very positive outcomes. We all know there was a rationale for change. TT $10 billion in debt, a loss of about $8 billion in the last 5 years. That was Petrotrin. TT $3 billion in taxes and royalties owed to the government, and a projected loss of $2 billion per annum going forward in a best case scenario. The board reviewed all the options, and the board proposed to the government, and the government accepted that the company be restructured. This led to the creation of a holding company, Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, and the subsidiaries are Heritage Petroleum Limited, which is an exploration and production company, Paria Fuel Trading Company, which is a bunkering, trading, and marketing company, Garakara Refining Limited, where the assets of the refinery was placed, and Petrotrin, maintaining for legacy matters like the land distribution we are here today. By creating a lean and mean state oil company, Heritage Petroleum has ensured its profitability. Heritage declared a profit of $1.4 billion in 2019. Astute management and low production costs have allowed Heritage to surmount the low oil price environment. Its current cost of production is just around $30 per barrel, and it is below the trending oil price of US $40 per barrel of the comparative WTI or NYMEX crude. Most importantly, everybody said it, all these so-called pundits, Karen Lindsay Prasad Becher and head of the corps. Even I don't want to be too critical of the MSG, but even the MSG leader, David Abdullah, said we cannot sell Petrotrin crude. The crude is sour. There will be no market for the crude. Today, ladies and gentlemen, Heritage crude is being sold at Brent, which is the highest quality crude in the world, minus a mere $3. It is WTI plus around 5. That crude was transferred to the Pointe-à-Pied refinery under Petrotrin at WTI minus 6. So 6 plus 3. We're virtually getting $7 to $9 more than the crude was valued at before. And based on that, Heritage has been profitable, $4.something billion in revenue. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, never let this escape your thoughts. Heritage declared a profit of $1.4 billion after servicing all Petrotrin's loan in the bond refinancing. Because that bond refinancing, if it wasn't handled properly, could have sunk this economy. The Minister of Finance has said that, the Prime Minister has said that on numerous occasions. So today, as we deal with our legacy issues with Petrotrin, a lot of people were hurt. A lot of people came off the payroll. Some of them came back into the operating companies. Some of them are still not gainfully employed. They got reasonably, and in some cases, handsome termination benefits. And today, the government is following through with the land distribution program to provide fully serviced housing lots to the former Petrotrin employees. On the Paria side, when we decided to restructure Petrotrin, it was said that gas will be short, LPG will be short, bitumen will be short. Ladies and gentlemen, not for a single day did this country suffer from any shortage of fuel. There was always fire under your pot with the LPG transition, and there has never been a shortage of bitumen to continue our road construction program. So all in all, the company has done well. I want to congratulate the board and management of Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited, the board and management of Paria, and the board and management of Heritage Petroleum Company for doing yeoman service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the refinery. More will be said about the refinery later on. But the government took the decision to divest the refinery business. In September 30th, 2019, the government chose Patriotic Energies and Technologies Company Limited as the preferred bidder through a transparent process. Government has submitted to the preferred bidder a proposed sales and purchase agreement for its consideration. We are in the final phases of this negotiation, and I expect personally, as somebody who is intrinsically involved in the discussion, that it will come to an amicable solution in the shortest possible time. But let me deal with one Mr. Lee. The Member of Parliament for Pointe-à-Pierre, and the Leader of the Opposition, saying that a UNC government will restart the Petrotrin refinery. Ladies and gentlemen, they say things in a very irresponsible manner. First and foremost, the refinery was shut down and mothballed for a future business model, which we have found, because the cost structure was too high. We were importing 100,000 to 120,000 barrels of crude per day, dwindling our foreign exchange reserve, only to lose $5 to $7 per barrel after it is refined. The whole cost structure was flawed. And let me just make one point clearly. We have praised Trinidad Petroleum Holdings for refinancing the bond. If, God forbid, I don't even want to say it, and the other side wins the election, and they reopen that refinery, they will be in breach of the covenant in which the bond was refinanced. What will happen is that immediately this country will have to come up with a check of $6 billion TT dollars in a one-off payment to the bankers. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an open door to the IMF. I say no more again. That is an open door to the IMF. And I want to tell you here this afternoon that UNC policy is opening a wide corridor to the International Monetary Fund. In closing, the Southwestern Peninsula and the oil belt in general is poised to benefit further from decisions of this government. In the fourth quarter of this year, Caribbean Gas Chemicals Limited, CGCL, at the Union Industrial Estate will begin production of 1 million tons per year of methanol and 20,000 tons per year of DME, which is dimethyl ether. Permanent staff of 160 persons is projected. The Highway 2.14 is very well advanced. Just this month or last month, I think, the San Fernando Waterfront project was commissioned. This will lead to an investment of approximately $1 billion. Right here in Labrie, projects include the Labrie Dry Dock, and probably more importantly for the energy sector, is the phase 2 of the Galeota Port expansion. Galeota Port expansion, that is in the Mayaro area, it's not in the southwest, but it's in the southeast, still south. Prime Minister was in south in Moruga yesterday, so good things are happening to the south and to the southland. The Galeota Phase 2 port will be a modernized and world-class port with the capability of meeting current specification and trends in the international maritime industry. The Phase 2 port expansion will provide Panamax-sized vessel, a berthing length of 900 meters, capable of accommodating 4 vessels and drafts of 12.8 meters. Discussions are ongoing with the current partner to bring this matter to a close. So despite the challenges that we face, we've handled the COVID health aspect extremely well. We are #1 in the world. Even from the economy, the livelihood, as the Prime Minister said, lives and lives, we are managing the livelihood the best way it could. We are managing it better than most. There hasn't been one retrenchment in the public sector in Trinidad and Tobago. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a function of good leadership, strong leadership under this current administration, ably led by the Honorable Prime Minister. So in conclusion, government took the correct decision and ensured the viability of the state's interest in the oil business. The initiatives that we have undertaken will over time provide some benefits and measure of relief to former Petrotrin employees. I like the tone of your chairman, Mr. Kwamena. You contributed. Nobody said no. Change has come, and we will be opening up opportunities for everyone. It will take some time, but never go to bed one night and feel that your contribution to the energy sector and to the oil sector in the southwestern peninsula and to the oil sector in the state energy sector, which is refining and exploration and production, will go unheralded. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention, and once again, I want to thank the former Petrotrin employees for their tremendous contribution through time to the economy of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now we come to our feature address for this afternoon, which will be delivered by none other than the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley.
A very good evening to all of you present here this evening, and those of you viewing and listening to us on our transmission on our various platforms. Permit me to acknowledge the presence of my cabinet colleague, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. Also with us this evening is the Honorable Major General Retired Edmund Dillon, the country's Minister of Housing and Urban Development. We also have the Minister of Communication with us, Senator Donna Cox, and His Worship the Mayor of Point Fortin, Mr. Kennedy Richards, Councillor in that corporation. I would also like to acknowledge the presence and involvement of Petrotrin's Deputy Chairman, Mr. Renal Ajoda Singh, and the recent arrival of Petrotrin's Chairman, Mr. Michael Corbiner. Normally it's the other way around. You acknowledge the chairman first and the deputy chairman after. But somebody knew that the chairman was going to be late. So they put the deputy chairman first and the chairman after. But I like it. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industry. And I think we have another permanent secretary with us today from the Ministry of Housing. And also we have representatives of the OWTU, Oilfield Workers Trade Union, representatives of the National Petroleum Staff Association, the NPSA, representatives of the Estate Police Association, the EPA, councillors of the Superior Corporation, councillors of the Point Fortin Borough Regional Corporation, former Petrotrin employees, wherever you might be, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen all. On assuming office in September 2015 after a general election, and cognizant of the deteriorating state of Petrotrin, the government established the Lashley Committee in February 2017. That was just about approximately 6 months after we came into office. And that committee's assignment was to review the operations of Petrotrin. Because for those of us who were familiar with the country's circumstance, we knew that this was an urgency which required immediate attention. The committee was not only to review the operations, but to make recommendations thereon. And the committee submitted its report on the 3rd of June 2017. The committee's assessment of Petrotrin was that its mode of operation was not sustainable. Among its recommendations was that Petrotrin must have a focused mandate, be governed and managed as a competitive business aimed at becoming a sustainable, profitable entity. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries disclosed the contents of the Lashley report to the OWTU, comprising its President General and members of the trade union at the meetings July 19th and August 8th, 2017. There were presentations on the financial state of affairs of Petrotrin, which included its financial performance of both exploration and production and refining and marketing, as well as the status of its debt, its bonds. The company's financial position was as follows. October 1st, 2016 to June 2017, a loss of $833.1 million. The debt burden at that time was a total debt carried by the company of $11.726 billion. And a US bullet payment due of $850 million US due to be paid by August 2019. With respect to the company's operating costs, it was observed by that review that the wages and salaries at Petrotrin accounted for 53.5% of the company's total expenses. The lifting cost of a barrel of oil at Petrotrin then, land-produced oil, was approximately $40 per barrel, $39.86 per barrel. Lifting cost of the offshore oil, Trin Mars oil, was approximately $44 a barrel, $43.89 per barrel. More importantly, the refinery margin was negative US $3.57 per barrel, where that statistic comes from the total cost minus the gross refinery margin. And of course, the refinery utilization was just at about 60%. And the working capital deficit, meaning requiring to run to the Minister of Finance frequently, the working capital deficit in this company was $6.5 billion. And that does not include, up to that point, the debt to the government by this company. Yes, because state companies are required to pay taxes like any other company. State companies fall under the company's audience, and they're required to pay taxes. Petrotrin was owing taxes to the exchequer to the tune of $3.2 billion. The Minister of Energy and Energy Industries informed the OWTU that in the face of the above challenges that I just mentioned, there was need for urgent restructuring of the company. The OWTU responded that in principle, it supported the restructuring, but with what they call the right approach. Restructuring means different things to different people. To the government that had to bring about a real restructuring, it meant what you have seen and what you have just been told by the minister. To some people, it meant not a man must go. Clearly, it meant different things to different people. The board of directors of Petrotrin was given a mandate to return the company to profitability and its management as a private, commercially oriented company. In this exercise, the board of Petrotrin engaged in consultation with the stakeholders, with industry experts, with a view to securing a sustainable turnaround of the company to return Petrotrin to profitability and viability. The rationale for that change and for the government's choice of direction was a $10 billion debt, more than 10, as a matter of fact, 10 plus. The loss in previous years, just before that time, of $8 billion in a 5-year period, and of course the $3 billion owed in taxes and royalties. And more disturbingly is that as you look to the future, what was being projected by the best analysis of the best outcome was the loss of $2 billion per year going forward. And of course, the bulk of that loss was being made by the company that was engaged in refining, where the company does not produce enough oil to run refinery operations, having to import 2/3 of the oil that it was refining. The board reviewed all of these options and decided to look at them in the context of, one, to maintain the status quo will require an injection of $25 billion, and even that would sustain a negative cash flow of $7.2 billion per annum. Two, to seek to improve efficiency would require an injection of $20 billion and would sustain negative cash flows of $4.7 billion per annum. to focus on exploration and production, third option, and terminaling, but with closure of the refinery, which would require an injection of 10 billion and would generate positive cash flows of $3 billion per annum. The proposal to close the refinery was based on evaluation of the business model under which Petrotrin operated. In all scenarios developed by the board of directors, the refinery sustained substantial losses and eroded gains achieved by the exploration and production side of the business. In simple language, what that meant is that there was no model that we could have come up with to show any profitability with the refinery. And the three options I just mentioned, the outcome of those options 1 and 2 would have been that whatever positives would have come in the restructuring from the subsidiary companies that we're operating now, that positive, those profits would have been eroded by the refinery. Based on the economic evaluation of the various options, the board of directors recommended the only viable option, that is the focus on exploration and production and terminaling and the closure of the refinery. The government of Trinidad and Tobago accepted the recommendation of the board, except in the case of the refinery, which the government agreed would be put up for sale or lease. On Tuesday, August 21st, 2018, a government team led by the Prime Minister met with the OWTU, led by the President General, and outlined the decision taken by the Cabinet on the restructuring of Petrotrin. The Prime Minister informed the OWTU that based on its analysis of the various options, the board informed that the most viable and economical option for the way forward for Petrotrin would be a structure which does not involve refining operations, and recommended that to the Cabinet. Cabinet accepted the recommendation and advised the board of directors to present the employee representatives and the employees with the decision for the restructuring of the company. The Prime Minister informed the union that based on the decision, Petrotrin would be exiting the refinery business and the Pointe-à-Pierre refinery will cease to operate as a state-owned business. On August 27th, the board of directors met with its employees and their union representatives to announce plans for changes that would be implemented to get the company on a path to sustainability and profitability. On the 2nd of September 2018, the Prime Minister, in an announcement to the nation, informed of the decision to reinvent Petrotrin. Pursuant to its new direction, the board developed a corporate structure to support this new business model. The corporate structure comprises a holding company, Trinidad Petroleum Holding Limited, and its subsidiaries. That is Petrotrin. Petrotrin, as you knew it, became a holding company, not shut down or disappeared. It became a holding company. And it then held a subsidiary, Heritage Petroleum Company Limited, which acquired exploration and production assets of the parent company, Petrotrin, and that was established as the Exploration and Production Company. Another subsidiary of this holding company became Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited, and that involved fuel logistics and all energy trading aspects of the hydrocarbon business. The Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, Petrotrin, also known as Legacy Petrotrin, manages all legacy items of the former Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited. And the third subsidiary, Guacara Refining Company Limited, the last of the four subsidiaries, was established to replace what was known as Petrotrin's Point-à-Pierre refinery. All assets held by Petrotrin relative to refinery operations were transferred to this entity, and it is where the provision of utility services to Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited is administered. The relevant assets were transferred by vesting order from Petrotrin to the new entities. The new corporate structure took effect on December 1st, 2018. In keeping with collective bargaining agreements, 4,626 employees, comprising 3,400 permanent employees, 1,226 casual or temporary employees and some contract employees, received $2.7 billion in cash parting compensation, terminal benefits, which include vacation entitlement, outstanding back pay inclusive of the medical plan coverage for 2 years. With respect to land distribution plan, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, conscious of the need to provide a soft landing to former employees of Petrotrin, agreed to consider additional measures. In an address on December 17, 2018, to the House of Parliament, the Honorable Prime Minister, namely me, advised that the government would enter into a housing program for the terminated former Petrotrin employees. Pursuant to that undertaking, a committee was set up to formulate a proposal to enable the distribution of residential lots and agricultural plots to former employees who received termination benefits resulting from the restructuring of Petrotrin. With respect to the supply of petroleum products, these products comprise liquid petroleum fuels, bitumen, and liquefied petroleum gas, LPG. Paria Fuel Trading Company took over the responsibility for supply of liquid petroleum fuels, that is gasoline and diesel, to the local and regional markets, and they did so with success. The company retains a 20-day stock of liquid petroleum fuels at all times. Phoenix Park Gas Processors Company Limited, in collaboration with National Petroleum Marketing Company Limited, has serving and meeting the demands of the local market with LPG. Trinidad Lake Asphalt and the local private sector has been meeting the requirement for bitumen. The restructuring was predicated on an establishment of independently operated units. The two active operating units are Heritage Petroleum Company Limited and Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited. Both have been success stories. With respect to Heritage Petroleum, for the financial year 2019, its first year of operation, Heritage achieved a net profit of $1.4 billion on revenue sales of $5.4 billion. And the keys to this success are: one, the lifting cost at Heritage of $29.49 US per barrel for that financial year 2019. Compare that with what I just told you under the old Petrotrin arrangement, where the lifting cost on land was $39 and offshore $44. Heritage is lifting at $29.49. Two, a stronger workover performance, improved production efficiency, and optimization offshore. Three, its moral crude has fetched extremely good prices in the market. West Texas Intermediate, which is a marker that we were using before, plus $3 to $5. And most days that puts us just about $2 or $3 below Brent, which is the most common and high-level international benchmarking. Four, organizational capability, comprising a mix of Petrotrin and newly engaged experienced resources. Five, a disciplined approach to its cost structure. Six, oil production, which had dropped to 31.8 thousand barrels per day prior to the commencement of the restructuring, peaked at 36.7 thousand barrels per day in April 2020. Seven, Heritage currently employs 405 persons in permanent positions, long-term and short-term contracts. 285 persons are former Petrotrin employees, and 120 of those are new hirings. In 2019, Heritage and Shell signed a memorandum of understanding with a view to entertaining a joint venture with respect to the appraisal and development of underdeveloped offshore acreage and exploration of new undiscovered reservoirs. With respect to Paria Trading, this company achieved a net profit of $109 million on revenues of $7.3 billion for the financial year of 2019. Paria employs 92 persons, of which 67 are former Petrotrin employees. 40 are on permanent contracts, and 27 are on fixed contracts. The key to its successes are: one, local and regional markets were adequately provided with an uninterrupted supply of fuel. Of the total 13.4 million barrels of products sold, 7.2 million barrels were supplied to the local market for the period September 30th, 2019. Providing the safe export, that was the second reason for its success. Providing the safe export of 11.2 million barrels of crude for the sister company of Heritage Petroleum Company Limited through Paria's terminal for the period ending September 30th, 2019. And thirdly, continuously investing in the asset integrity of the terminaling and port facilities to maintain a safe and efficient supply of fuel to other customers outside Trinidad and Tobago. With respect to the government's contribution, total government's contributions from the Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited group of companies for the period 1st October 2019 to 30th June 2020, that has been $1.258 billion for taxes relating to petroleum profits tax, corporation tax, green fund levy, value-added tax, royalties, minimum rents, production levy, head licenses fee, Those obligations including cash in escrow and withholding tax. That whole sea of taxes which are required to be paid by an operating oil company, for the first time in I can't remember how long, those taxes have been paid by the operator in the energy business owned by the state of Trinidad and Tobago. First time in a long time. The old Petrotrin model, for all these taxes not being paid, would have resulted in a $3 billion tax liability and debt to the exchequer. That is not so now. In this difficult period where every dollar counts, it is a blessing that our involvement in oil through heritage allows the company to pay before its declaration of its profit all these taxes I just mentioned. And of course, it will pay its corporation tax on its profit like everybody else. With respect to restructuring and the refinery, Guaracara Refinery was offered to interested investors for sale or lease. The bidding process for sale or lease of the refinery and its associated fuel trading facilities was divided into 2 stages. Stage 1 of the bidding process attracted 77 expressions of interest, of which only 25 emerged as potential buyers or lessors. After evaluation of these 25, 5 companies were selected to continue in the process. 1 was a company called Beowulf, 2 another one called Glencore Limited, 3 another one called Edgewood Holdings, 4 another one called Klish, and 5 locally owned Patriotic Energies and Technology Company Limited, a company owned by the interests of OWTU. By June 19th, Cabinet agreed to the appointment of an evaluation committee to evaluate bids for the sale of the refinery on the basis of these 5 proposals. By September 2019, September 20th, Cabinet announced that Patriotic Energies and Technology Company Limited, simply called Patriotic, was the preferred bidder for the sale of the Guaracara Refinery Company Limited and Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited. Patriotic was granted by the Minister of Finance at the direction of the Cabinet a 3-year moratorium on all payments of principal and interest towards the purchase of the refinery, and a further 10 years at a fair market interest rate to complete the payment of the offered sum of $700 million, which it offered for the refinery. Patriotic was the only bidder which offered an upfront payment consideration. Their proposal indicated upfront cash of $700 million for the refinery assets. Every other bidder had a different kind of arrangement, some of which were close to being laughable. Patriotic presented its response to requirements given by the evaluation committee overseeing the sale of the refinery. By January 15, 2020, when COVID arrived, Patriotic was on the job, indicating that they wanted to carry out a detailed due diligence exercise and inspection of the refinery, among other activities, before the company can proceed further with the negotiations. By March 2nd, 2020, just before the entire country was closed down, Patriotic began its inspection of the refinery. In the meantime, as this exercise progressed, a proposed sale and purchase agreement has been forwarded by government to Patriotic Energies and Technology Company for its consideration. The salient points of this draft agreement are as follows. 1, the completion of the detailed inspection of the assets inclusive of an inspection test plan, the schedule of work and cost of the refinery startup activities. 2, the concluded definitive financing terms for the seller's credit note with Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited and Trafigura or any other similar entity. 3, the receipt of all licenses and approvals and successful negotiation of all collateral agreements. 4, associated land for leasehold will be for a period of 99 years. 5, the period of handover of the logistics assets, inclusive of the terminaling operations at Paria, following the startup of the refinery assets by 6 months, with written safeguards of national fuel supply and fuel supply security. Meaning that the refinery would have to be up and running for 6 months before we conclude the handing over of the terminal arrangements. And of course, in that handing over, documentation by way of the license that would be a requirement for the operations to commence. And in that license, there will be safeguard for the supply of fuel to the nation. And of course, 6, the restart date of the refinery to be 12 months from the closing date. The company intends to fulfill its mandate starting with a refurbishment investment of approximately $500 million US. And this investment would stimulate the creation in the short and medium term of approximately 7,000 skilled and unskilled jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, people of Trinidad and Tobago, from all that I've just said, I've taken my time to go through it slowly and clearly. You would have gathered that this is a sane, sober, and serious approach to serious billion-dollar business with far-reaching positive or negative consequences for every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago. That's where we stand today. So when you hear the opposition that thinks it can win an election because accidents do occur, saying that if they come into government, they, the opposition, which will be the government will abandon all of this. This sane, sober, transparent, and serious process. They will abandon this, and the government will return to operate a government refinery in Pointe-a-Pierre. 2 things you need to note there. The Minister of Finance mentioned, the Minister of Energy mentioned one, and that is, even as they are saying that, the bondholders who raised the money to allow the country, through heritage, to service that $850 million US loan that we dealt with last year, they would have heard the incoming government saying that the government was going to open the money-losing refinery. That immediately would call into question the status of that loan and its documents and its contracts. And if they proceed with their foolishness, God forbid that on August 10th they become the government on sometime after, and they proceed to keep that promise, it would mean that we are back not just to square one, but square one minus, because the Minister of Finance will then have to treat with the bondholders. Immediately, the country would be downgraded. And if they have to service that loan to save the day, immediately we will be a candidate on the road to the IMF. But more importantly, what level of stupidity is this? Where you would see the profitability of the restructuring by way of the operations of Heritage, and you would pass that up for political stupidity to go and try to recreate the problem that we were in, that you ignored between 2010 and 2015. You ignored it between 2010 and 2015. Even if I wanted to ignore it, my government, we could not ignore it because the check was due in August 2019. Whoever was in government did not have the option to kick the can down the road to another government's 5-year term. They kicked it from 2010 to 2015. It landed on our lap. And that is why, within 6 months of coming into office, we were dealing with Petrotrin by grasping the nettle and grabbing the bull by the horns. That is what responsible governance is. And responsible governance is not always popular. Sometimes it takes time for it to be seen by the wider national community. I was around when a PNM government bought Texaco. Texaco was an oil company that owned the refinery and the acreage. And they had had enough. They thought they had taken out all of what Trinidad and Tobago had to offer profitably, and they were leaving. And here it was. This big company, Texaco, one of the big 7 sisters in the world, could not continue to stay in the energy business in Trinidad and Tobago. And there were those like the UNC mouthpieces now who were present in a different form then, saw a PNM government buying that asset. And you know what their position was? They objected to it. They said it was wasting money. In fact, the government at the time did not have the money to buy it. But the government knew that the best thing available, the only thing we could have done was to allow it not to die, because we felt that there was a future. The government paid half of the selling price in cash, and the other half in oil as produced by the company. And eventually we paid for Texaco and created Trintoc in the end. And Trintoc became Petrotrin, and Petrotrin begat Heritage. And the same thing they were saying then, they're saying now. Because had we not bought Texaco then, the long history of profitability that we have had, and all the contributions and the good life that thousands of persons enjoyed as a result of that purchase, according to them, should have been left to go to dust. And that is why today, in their new incarnation, they could come and tell you in the face of all this serious work and the potential for the OWTU and its employees and their families and our nation to have an investment in a different format. Because I tell you one thing, and I'll tell the OWTU that today, it was all well and good to overstaff it when it was a government refinery and lose money. The day you all sign your money on it, you will not be doing that. You will run it properly like a business, and you'll make substantial profits, and all of us in this country would end up better off for that. But they're going to come and tell you, playing popularity contests, playing smart with foolishness, talking the usual truckload of garbage, that you put them in office. And when they get in, they will abandon the OWTU, they will abandon all of this work, they'll abandon this position, and they will go down there and have David Lee and a handful of others try to enrich themselves as they did in the last term. And this, I want to say to all of you, OWTU and WTUO, on August 10th, you have a responsibility to come out and defend the people of Trinidad and Tobago the same way they defended you when you were in there. And we have dodged a bullet with that $850 million US loan, because had we not conducted our business properly, had the Minister of Finance and the board of Petrotrin, to whom we owe a debt of gratitude, and Wendell Motley and other people, had we not gone to the market with a credible proposal, and had we not got that fund, that loan refinanced, it would have been a completely different state of affairs in Trinidad and Tobago today. So all those who have a problem, all those who have a pain, just call that skylark as compared to had we not done that. If the Minister of Finance in Trinidad and Tobago was not able to guide the company to a place to refinance that loan, this country would have been just what they wanted to be. We have prevented that. And we are called upon again on August 10th, 2020, to intervene to prevent those people who have offered to deviate from this. Ladies and gentlemen, by March 26th, in the middle of the pandemic, Cabinet reviewed the report for the distribution of lands for employees of Petrotrin that were terminated due to the restructuring. And that work was produced by the committee and approved the recommendations contained therein, as well as approving a policy framework for land distribution to Petrotrin, former Petrotrin employees. The details of that policy are as follows. With respect to residential lots, to be eligible, you have to be a citizen or resident of Trinidad and Tobago. So if you hear them talking about Venezuelans getting land, as usually, they're bound to say that. That would not be true. First and foremost, you have to be a citizen or a resident, officially resident in Trinidad and Tobago. And then you also have to have been an employee of Petrotrin who was terminated. You have also to be 21 years and over. And in phase one of this distribution, you have to have been, having qualified in those three categories I just mentioned, you have to be now not an owner or part owner of a house in Trinidad and Tobago to get in phase one. Phase two will cover all other employees. The size, the approximate size of the plot is a house plot of 5,000 square feet, fully serviced with all statutory approvals. And there will be no stipulation as to having to build within a specified time. But we expect that with the demand that is there, that you would build as quickly as you can. As Max and House would say, we need the activity. With respect to these residential lots identification for phase one, the lots should be sourced from lands identified for the government-aided self-help program. Other lots would be sourced from the HDC lots from within greenfield developments. There will also be land vested in the Heritage Petroleum Company, which has PSAEL, which are lands and assets managed or owned by PSAEL. The following greenfield sites where the LSA has commenced pre-construction activities would be involved, and of course, funding is available for the completion of the developments at La Romaine 2 in La Romaine, Alambe Street in San Fernando, St. Madeleine, San Fernando, Golconda, San Fernando, Glenroy 2 in Princestown, Balmain in Couva, Guapo in Point Fortin. We also have some other sites that are earmarked. And these sites are La Savane in Guaguari, Nurse Trace in Guaguari. In phase 1, we have identified and expect to deliver 1,000 of these lots, which are currently ready for use. These lots will be made available, as I said, to terminated workers of Petrotrin who do not currently own land or home. Phase 2 will be available for the rest of the employees, as I mentioned. With respect to agricultural plots, eligible former employees who are either ready, they are already in agriculture and wish to expand, or have an interest in or some experience in agriculture, or they have a viable agribusiness plan, including the source of funds for the proposed project. With respect to those agricultural plots, they will be standard plots of 2 acres, variable depending on the type of agriculture that the entity would want to get involved with. There'll be the standard proposed lease, standard agricultural lease, 30 years, subject to a renewal of a further 30 years. And activities on these agricultural plots would be monitored by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Further, the government will support activity on these plots through this monitoring by special ADB provisions of financial support packages of up to $500,000 per venture. With respect to agricultural plots which are identified for these activities, they are to be sourced from agricultural lands owned or managed by PSAEL, lands vested in Heritage Petroleum Company Limited, state lands which are suitable for agriculture, identified by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. And finally, any surplus agricultural land developed by the EMBDC remaining after distribution of agricultural plots to complete the Caroni land distribution program. Ladies and gentlemen, this is as big a package as we could have wanted to engage in. We need to complete this. We need to ensure that this is done. And that is why today, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, head of the government, I want to say publicly to the people of Trinidad and Tobago and all those who want to listen, that it is the intention of the government of Trinidad and Tobago in the coming days to sign off with the OWTU on the beginning of the way back for the Petrotrin refinery, known today as Guayacarrier, as soon as the OWTU is ready to commit itself to what I've said here in this statement today and provide its commitment by its signature. That is to follow. And when that would have been done, the people of Trinidad and Tobago would have solved yet another one of its major problems. This government did not have the luxury of postponing this outcome. The outcome has not been without pain. It has not been without acrimony. It has not been without the requirement for significant capital outlay. But like everything else we commit to do as a nation in 1962, we step forward with boundless faith in our destiny. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. And I now call to the podium to deliver a vote of thanks on behalf of ex-employees of Petrotrin, Mr. Ronald Prince.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chairperson. First of all, I want to thank God for being present here among us, for guiding us, giving us traveling mercies. And thank the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Ministers in the respective ministries, representative of the ministries and the employees. I want to thank the Mayor of Point Fortin for your presence here. Chairperson, Mrs. Goring, Mrs. Samlal Singh for delivering that safety briefing for us here. Members of the Trinidad Petroleum Holding Company Limited, members of Petrotrin representatives, representatives of Heritage, representative of all unions, EPA, the OWTU, and the NPSA. All councillors present, we want to thank you for being here. We want to thank the media personnel, we want to thank you very much. The PA system people, thank you very much. The police protective services, the police fire service. We want to thank the security at the school, the staff at the school for accommodating us here this evening. We want to thank all the ushers, all the decorators here this evening. Thank you very much. The place looks beautiful. Stephane for that wonderful entertainment. Stephane, we want to thank you very much. You've been wonderful indeed. All former employees, we want to thank you for being here. And all invited guests, each and every one of you. Anybody I forgot to mention, it wasn't intentional. So once again, we thank you for being present here, and may God be with you. Thank you.
And with that, we've come to the end of our program. Thank you very much again for being here with us. And thank you to our viewing audience for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. May God bless you.
That was the Petrotrin Land Distribution launch in Palo Seco. Stay tuned to TTT, Chalk City 91.1 FM, and TTT Live Online on Facebook as we bring you developing stories. We now stand by for the NLCB's Playway Pick 2 and the Pick 4 draws. Good luck. I'm DK Rosner. Bye.